Zero Gravitas here, and welcome back to our crafting playthrough world. Returning viewers might have already noticed what's different. Yes, that's right, I'm going to try verbal communication. So yeah, I really love the precision of captions, but unfortunately they're so slow to produce that I only get about 3 to 4 minutes of video edited per day. And you know, that's on a good day, so to catch up on the big backlog of text that I've got and build tricks that I like to show off, I'm going to try my best to make shorter videos a little bit more quickly. They might be a little rougher in places, but hopefully we won't lose any information, and you know, that's the main reason I started on YouTube, to get some interesting game ideas out there. We may even get some bonus information squeezed in there, so let me know if I ramble too much, and hopefully you guys won't hate the sound of my voice as much as I do sometimes. But if you're really not keen on it, then please let me know. I really do appreciate all feedback, both positive and negative, so let me know what you think about this new format in the comments below. Goodbye, Mr. Invader. Anyway, one more thing before we get started on this episode properly. Last time we kind of glossed over the construction of this Zoologist quadcopter tech, who's just finishing mopping up here, and that's everybody done. For the benefit of those without Steam Workshop access, and particularly console players from whom I've had a couple of requests, we're going to do a quick teardown of this tech and look at the internals. I'm pretty proud of how well this tech works. It's the end result of much experimentation over many build iterations, and almost every block is exactly where it needs to be. But you're welcome to skip ahead a few minutes to the start of the Better Future content. Okay, so we're carrying an SCU unit with us even though it's quite heavy, because it lets us deploy it even when there's enemies nearby that would stop us from anchoring down properly. And it's a lot easier than having to fish through the inventory every time to get one out and then put it away again afterwards. At the top here we've got a venture altimeter, which is kind of decorative but also gives us the altitude display, and the venture cab similarly gives us the speed readout, which is just a kind of nice bonus. Underneath is the main cab, which is just a little bit safer and more secure down there. And then at the bottom, demonstrating itself nicely, is the AI module, the anchored AI module, which lets us use the quadcopter as a turret when we're not on board. Just leave it in sentry mode. Also, this has one of the longest anchor lengths of any of the small blocks in the game, and it just lets us anchor more easily on rough terrain. And that concludes our presentation. Undo that quickly. At the back you can see we've got just 2 gyroscopes, and that's just the perfect number to hold the balance of the quadcopter fairly upright, you know, stopping us from ever tipping over, but giving us enough leeway to lean forward for a good amount of speed. And similarly, the Seraphim nose propellers are just giving us enough lift to allow us to go upwards without ever having to feather the throttle on the shift control too heavily. We can just use lean to lose a little bit of altitude if we want to. But then we've got 4 of the 2-way adjustment thrusters, and they're great because they've got, you know, 4 attachment points around the outside as well, and they're actually a bit stronger than the 5-way adjustment thrusters in, you know, any one direction that they're firing. And the 4 ways are just helping us to turn your, as they call it, the quadcopter, and also stray from side to side, which does a bit of rolling for us, whereas the top 5 ways are giving us pitch forward and back as well as roll from where they're leveraging at the top. And the 0 propellers are giving us a bit of bonus speed and also helping with pitching. Venture's large sloped blocks are actually kind of overpowered compared to the Hawkeye weapon pylons. They've got twice the health and just over 1/3 of the weight, so they're really great for holding the avalanche launchers, which themselves are perhaps the most overpowered weapon in the game, given that they've got a 300 meter firing range, which is all the way out to the 3rd ring, the farthest point on the radar. self-charging, of course, with the solar panels. We've got the cluster missile launchers, which are there for short-range small enemies when the avalanche launchers are taking their time to turn around. Then on the front, we've got shotguns, which are there kind of in place of drills, which are a little bit too heavy and tipping the craft forward. The shotguns will still do a little bit of damage at close range, enough to take out trees anyway and help you with harvesting. Power gauge, of course, always handy. And underneath, we've got the front shield bubble, which is all the way out front to give us a big as possible buffer zone between explosive rounds like missiles and megatons hitting the front shield, so the splash damage hopefully won't hit the main craft too badly. And then we've got the bubble at the back, which just about covers the front of the tech at a very close range, in case anything gets inside the front bubble. The repair bubbles from Venture are actually, I think, the best, in that they have the highest repair rate, and overlapping two in the middle here keeps the core of the craft intact when it does take some damage, repairing it up very quickly. Now, if you're building from scratch, I'd suggest to construct the central core first, and then just try to jam in the batteries afterwards, because they're a bit awkward with only 2 attach points. You've got to get them in just the right orientation. And the core itself, we've got the thimble collector, which has got a decent range of collection for bucking up those bits of vibron or other resources which can be burned by the mobile furnace generators, and anything that can't be burned just gets popped off into the air with the mobile delivery cannon. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything on the craft, so we'll just reload it and show off the handy new tech swap feature, which will preserve the power levels in any of the batteries that get used in both the old tech and the newly swapped to tech. And we can also just show off a bit of mining. These avalanche launchers are actually kind of crazy in that they'll mow down rocks pretty easily, so I mean you don't even really need drills. We're just doing some of our quest here in clearing out the rocks. And there goes one of the carbide ore chunks being burned just to finish off topping up our power. Anyway, with that sidetrack out of the... Where did he come from? Whoa. Hello. Anyway, as I was saying, let's head back to the trade station and see if they still have that Better Future license mission that I was kind of teasing in last episode for those who are watching closely. I was hoping that these might be a good way to ease into this new format before we get back to explaining more involved crafting setups. And I know the teardown that we just did was all a bit backwards, but don't worry, in future we'll try and explain things as we're building them. Oh, and oh yeah, while we're en route, it's probably worth noting that, somewhat ironically, console players may have to wait 2 to 3 months for the Controlled Schemas, or Controlled Schemes, update, which will make this tech work correctly. Until that comes out though, the techs I showed earlier in last week's episode should still work fine. I expect you'll get all the Better Future content at the same time, which the devs are still finishing up. Hopefully it won't change too much from what we're seeing here in this pack. Now, if you've quite finished interrupting me, Calamity Bob, let's see if we can make an actual start on this episode's main content. Here we go. Back to the future. Find the Better Future tech. Wonder if that's a hint. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And by the way, notice that it's a GSO mission at the moment, like the Hawkeye starter mission. Here we go. That wasn't exactly hard. We found the Hubl, who's completely different to the Huddle, with a D, as I was calling the NPC when it was first released, as you know, dyslexic lols. Anyway, I really like the NPC design. It's kind of halfway between Eva from WALL-E and a Cyber Demon bending machine by Apple or something. So while Hubl's doing their little sales pitch, let's experiment with the properties of the Sky Anchor. we're just loading in our old determinist mobile crafter from episode 3 because it's got a little bit of muscle. This is purely for science, understand, nothing personal. So we can see that Hubl remains anchored while the tether length gets longer and longer. They're really quite stretchy, which is kind of helpful if we want to build a base up in the sky. And then the NPC just re-anchors if you take them too far. But you could take them for a bit of a walk back to your base or something if you wanted to. So, it's going to be straight up cash for access then. How archetypically mercantile. Actually, I think it's kind of cool that there's a late game use for the block bucks we've been saving up from resource farming. Oops, looks like I've gone too far away. Oh, we finished. Well, thank you very much. Jolly spiffing. Right, let's see what we've bought. I mean, won by completing that very difficult mission. Well, the SU's gonna hoover that all up, but we can have a look in inventory. Let's see now. Hang on. Where's a better future cab? What's going on? I've been robbed. Ah, it looks like we've got a corner block here stuck in our teeth, but there's no cab. What a rip-off. Anyway, nothing for it but to soldier on, stiff upper lip, what? Back to the train station, tally-ho. Let's see if we can save a bit of travel time by actually using our transport tower this time. Oops, it's here somewhere. Fast travel? What? I don't know what you're on about. Okay, let's see what we've got for our first proper mission. Hover racetrack, that sounds more like it. Where are we going? Oh, looks like back to the salt flats. Let's go get our quadcopter. So, Hubl, we meet again. What's this? You want more money? Shocking. Only 65,000 block bucks? Yes, please. Now, I'm sure we could do this early race with the tech that we're in, but we have the cash anyway, and we want the blocks from the hover tech to make our own racer for later, more difficult races. So, this isn't the speediest looking tech, but let's have a look at the controls first. Here we've got a little keyboard overlay so we can see which keys I'm pressing. Hubl wants us to use the up and down arrows to control lift, but that would mean 2 hands on the keyboard. But we may need the mouse to look around while we're driving. So, we're going to open the control schemes menu. And then from there, the main control options. Here, we'll rebind the lift control axis to left, shift, and control. And just stick boosters and propellers on page up and page down, why not? Then we need to apply this change to the individual control scheme too. I can reach shift and control with my left pinky finger. So there we go, 100 controls. Now, changing the main options key bindings will mess up our other control schemes too. So we'll just fix the lift on the quadcopter quickly. And there we go, job's a good one. Okay, ready, and we're off. Steady now. Steady. Now, and here we're gonna have to duck under, so we're making use of control. Ooh. Ooh, there's a bit of a twist there. Careful. Oh, and spinning out a bit when we lift it up. And we're done. Yeah, so that was ludicrously easy because we got very lucky with the terrain where the race spawned. It didn't exactly hurt that there was no time limit on the race either, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that later races are going to be far more tricky. Alright, let's see what we've won. Ooh, we've got one of those new beam lasers and a linear motion engine, and an ion engine, and a new battery. Cool. So it's probably nothing there that's going to be useful for winning races, but it's good to have them for later. Oh, actually, before we send you to the void, we'd better take a quick snapshot in case we need you later. Seems like we're fresh out of Better Future missions here, so we'll have to nip to a different trade station. Thankfully we have a bit of a shortcut. Hello base. Sorry, there's no fabrication today, but I do have a large crafting build lined up for after this double episode. And whip the Zoologist back out. To be honest, I'm not sure this was any quicker than just flying, but it made a bit of a change. Now, why aren't we flying? Oh yeah, we have to fix the old key bindings again. I'm hoping that the developers will make shift to control the default for lift. Who knows, they may even redesign this whole interface. Certainly they've been taking feedback on the control schemas. But for now, we'll just have to change over the key bindings on this tech and then re-snapshot it. And away we go. And what do we have? There we go. That's what we want. Off we go to our second hover race. Okay, let's get a quick bird's eye view of the track layout. Great, so this is looking a bit more interesting. Certainly it's no stroll on the salt flats. Yeah, so we could probably just about do this with some fancy flying, but that's not really the point of this episode, and other players might not even have Venture unlocked when trying this. So instead we're going to have a go with a hover. Now that it's light again, thanks to the miracles of editing. First up, let's see how Hubl's Hoverbird struggles with this rougher terrain. And we're off to a steady start on the flat. Nothing too challenging here, but we're about to hit a bit of a bump. Oh, and we've spun right out. And now we can't even get back up the hill. Ah, come on. Power. So, what went wrong there? Let's just get back to safety and I'll explain. So, these 4 hover rings which keep us aloft, they also help to push us forward and turn us. They do this by vectoring the angle at which they push off the ground. But when they're pushing off the ground harder to raise the tech up into the air, they simultaneously apply more turning force. More lift means more turning. So we'll suddenly spin out as we hit bumps, and also lose turning as we go over drops. Anyway, let's see how we can modify this design to make it a little bit more effective. First of all, we can just strip out all of the dead weight, these solid blocks which are doing nothing useful for us. And generally, racing vehicles will want to be longer than they are wide, just to reduce their turning ability a little and keep them pointing stably forwards. Well, that's looking a lot slimmer and more nimble, but let's give it a quick test, which is always best to do periodically while you're redesigning things. Drive and turning is feeling very anemic. And I think that'll be because we've forgotten the hover steers. As we saw last episode, these little blocks can provide a lot of force for movement here as well as turning. Yeah, that's so much better. Let's just reload this from a snapshot I made earlier to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. Cool, and may as well add air brakes front and back. Note that the air brakes only activate when we're not pressing any control inputs. And re-snapshot it quickly, and let's give it a quick test. It definitely feels a bit quicker off the mark. We've still got the same problem with spinning out. I think we're going to stop here because there's too much risk of us losing some of these expensive Better Future blocks if we get stuck near one of those enemies. So let's just nip back to safety and load a version with a little bit more protection. Okay, so here's a version I made earlier, which is just about the same base, but with 4 GSO batteries to power a regen and shield bubble. Then because of the extra weight of the batteries, we've got 4 fans to give it a bit more speed. And also a couple of tail wings, which I could admittedly have added to the earlier version. They'll help us keep pointing in the direction of travel and slow down fast turns a little. Whoops. And I guess we should put a little juice in here to make use of the power blocks. A little note about the Better Future stabilizing computer. Really it's more of a handbrake. What it does is activate the hover pads, adjustment thrusters and fans to counteract drift. Just like the air brakes, they won't do anything at all when you're pressing control inputs. So what you can see here is that while we're strafing pressing Q and E, it's also allowing us to drift forwards down the hill, because the stabilizing computer turns off entirely while we're pressing any control input. How about we take this bad boy for a proper shot at completing the race? Oh yes, speeding through these first 2 rings. Oh, don't mind us, just coming through. We're going to press Ctrl to dip down and make use of those skids at the front. Whoops. Well, no points for style there, but we're getting through pretty fast. Oh no, we've got a case of the spins. Steady. Oh, ouch. We're almost there. Whoops. Oh, fish sticks. We went out of bounds right at the end there. But this is fine, it means we can show off an even more compact design. Not so fast there, young Padawan. Let's just cancel that and load this snapshot. It's more of a hover bike design with just 2 hover rings, totally relying on the gyroscopes for lateral balance. So you could still use a design like this if you'd lost 1 or 2 of the rings in a little accident, say. Right, one more time with feeling. This design does tend to wobble a little bit from side to side, but it's just as fast and possibly even more stable with turning because there's only 2 hover rings throwing it off. This is fine, we can get through here, no pressure. Eek. Ah, I wasn't worried for a microsecond. Ah, this is okay, we can take our time now. 30 seconds to finish off the last couple gates. Easy down the last slope. Feels a bit like snowboarding. No problems. Just a final gate now. And we've finally done it. Now what's all this fuss about? One little enemy. Let's see what we've won. Ah! It would be better if you didn't destroy those blocks, thank you. I don't think we have to worry about that little guy. And I think this is a pretty good point to wrap up this episode. We've seen how you can more easily complete the Better Future hover race missions using only the parts sold by Hubl and a few basic GSO blocks, which is all I initially aimed for. But while I was looking at these, I also stumbled upon a host of new possibilities. We can actually use this limited range of blocks in conjunction with the Hoverbug to make some really powerful and interesting designs, which we're going to jump into next episode, when we'll start off by explaining just what is happening here.